All Fire, No Smoke is our candid conversation as two military aviators sharing the unique experiences we've had in combat, reconnaissance, and demonstration flying.
Through personal stories, technical details, and laughter, we explore the challenges of balancing leadership, motherhood, professional life, all while offering inspiring insights for those who are trying to strike that work-life balance.
We're excited for our listeners today and our viewers. We have the one and only Nicole Fifi Malachowski. She has so many accolades. One of the favorite ones that people love to talk about is that she was the very first woman Thunderbird pilot to fly for the United States Air Force Thunderbirds, and she's got some amazing stories about that. So hopefully we'll touch on some of that. She also worked in the White House not once but twice as a White House fellow, was joining forces. Nicole's the epitome of resilience because things didn't go quite the way she had been expecting them. She went through some really tough medical issues that we'll touch on as well, and has just completely bounced back, created this whole amazing life for herself, and is an advocate for tick-borne illnesses and helping to really move the needle on that, because there's a lot of people in this country that affects and they have no idea, and definitely a lot of medical personnel also who don't even test for it. So she's making huge changes, not just in her own life, but for everybody who has the opportunity to hear her speak. I want to share the first time I ever met Nicole Malachowski. I think I was 19 years old, so that was what, like 8 years ago, Nicole?
Yeah, just 8
So
years ago.
yeah, maybe
We're
more
looking
like
good, sister.
maybe more like 30 years ago. I got selected to be in the soaring squadron, and I walked in to this big meeting, and there's maybe two other women in the whole room, and who's leading the whole show? It's Nicole Ellingwood back then, and she's down in the front. So I've like always known what an amazing person she is, and it's been so great over the last 3 decades to see everyone else have the same kind of love for her. And just one more thing before I kick it off is that as a former Thunderbird myself and a number 3, like my friend Fifi, I've been asked 10 million times, "Are you the first woman Thunderbird?" And you would think that would get old, but it's not, because I absolutely love, love, love to be like, no, let me tell you all about Nicole Malachowski. So Nicole, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's a joy to be here. I mean, when Blaze and Dragon Lady ask you to do something, the only answer is yes, and I am excited to be here. And if it's any consolation, Blaze, I am constantly asked, "Were you the first woman fighter pilot?" And I am always delighted to correct them and let them know that we stand on the shoulders of Jeannie Leavitt, who was the first woman fighter pilot for our country. So I get asked similar questions as well, and it's always a joy to be able to shine a light on those that came before us.
Love it. And I feel so honored that I get to be with two amazing women today. Right now, I'm actually in Reno, Nevada, and we're going to Tailhook. And we have a real, no kidding, former, actually once a naval aviator, always a naval aviator, right? Dragon
That's
Lady.
it's 100%. Like my core is Navy, although I do love the Air Force. They've treated me really well, so I'll never say anything bad about either service. So Nicole, it is great to have you. Um, I know we met a long time ago as well. So not as long as like 30 years ago, but we were at the same event back in a Girl Scout event in Udvar Hazy Center. And
Yep,
I
the
just
Smithsonian.
yeah, the Smithsonian. So I remember you distinctively because you were in a wheelchair with broken legs and pregnant. And I was like, huh, wow.
Yep, I think that was late 2009 or something like that,
It,
2010.
it was. And
2010, probably early 2010.
yeah, and your husband was with you. And I'm just like, man, this lady is killing it right now. Just happy to be there. And just, you, what stood out to me the most, not only that you were a Thunderbird pilot, but that, you were just very gracious and happy, even though two broken legs. Was it two broken legs or one?
It was a single broken
A
leg
single
with 2
broken.
babies in my belly, so pregnant with
Yeah,
twins and a broken leg.
there was a lot going on, and I'm like,
Indeed.
dang. I was like,
Well,
how is she doing it?
it was a joy to meet you too. Obviously, I had never met a U-2 pilot before, so just with such a unique aircraft and such unique skills, I was honored to meet you as well, and to know that it was a fellow aviatrix made it even more special for me.
Absolutely, yes.
I
Thank
think you
you.
have to share that story there. How did we end up in a wheelchair with a broken leg?
Well, no good deed goes unpunished. That's right. It had to have been early 2010 because Snowmageddon happened in Washington, D.C., where my husband and I were stationed. And you might remember then President Barack Obama talking about Snowmageddon, and it shut everything down. And we lived within walking distance of the Pentagon. And at the time, we didn't have kids. And basically, they said, hey, we need essential personnel to come in. There were other people who were essential personnel, but both my husband and I volunteered because we didn't have kids and we didn't need to drive to go in and fill these essential, roles. And so we trudged through the blizzard over to the Pentagon where we were very essential. I remember watching Family Feud, maybe doing some crossword puzzles, taxpayers' dollars hard at work. And on the way home, on the walk home, I decided to go down a flight of stairs, not really using my feet, but using my backside. So I took a slip in the snow, tumbled all the way to the very bottom of the stairs where my foot caught and immediately crushed my leg, broke it in 3 places, fully dislocated my ankle, and sat there and thought, well, that's what I get for volunteering to go into the Pentagon to work today. But the funny part of the story I think you're alluding to is prior to that, I had 2 ultrasounds, which showed 1 healthy baby. My husband and I was thrilled, especially being later age in life, to know that we had 1 healthy baby in there. And when I fell down the stairs, I was rushed to emergency surgery, via an ambulance ride through a blizzard. And prior to the surgery, they had to give me an ultrasound. So the lady's doing the ultrasound. I'm in a lot of pain. My husband's worried. I'm about to go through surgery while I'm pregnant. And the lady's rubbing my leg, trying to calm me down during the ultrasound. And she's like, honey, your twins are fine, 2 strong heartbeats. And I looked at her and I thought, what in the world are you talking about? And she stared at me and I said, I'm not having twins. And she said, you don't know you're having twins? And she turned the ultrasound screen towards my husband and I, and both of us are rather adept at reading radar. And it was pretty obvious that there were 2 kids in there. So the joke in our family is that I fell down the stairs and the baby split in 2. So that's how we
Wow.
ended up with twins.
That's awesome. How old are they now? They're
They
17?
just Meryl, they just turned 15 actually, uh, last month, and actually June, and they just got their driver's permits. And I gotta tell you, I mean, I've taught people how to fly gliders, right, Blaze? I have taught people how to fly the F-15E, but man, it is a challenge trying to teach your teenagers how to drive a darn car.
I would leave that up to I would probably choke my kid out. Like when my son is old enough and he gets behind the wheel, he's gonna have
It
to go to
is
someone else.
It is something because all of a sudden, with their like 4 hours of driving time, they are experts. Because anytime they're passengers now, they are critiquing everything I do. I hear, Mom, you're 2 miles over. Mom, don't forget the signal. And I'm thinking to myself, I used to fly it, 500 miles upside down, 3 feet away from other planes, but okay.
Yeah. No respect
So
from your kids.
I tell you what, man, but it's a joy to see them trying something new. It's a joy to see them working through the struggle of it all, and it's a joy to see them grow up. So yeah.
And it's awesome that you've been able to use all these stories and make this amazing speaking career of it and take all of these really unique experiences as the first woman to do this and in a lot of different ways and apply that to the audience. And I just want to say I saw you speak and what I really want to result from this conversation is maybe you could go back and tell us how you got to where you were, but I saw you speak later in your Air Force maternity moo in a wheelchair in an extremely full area at the Capitol, pushing her between all these World War II veterans and their family. It was standing room only. She was sitting up on the stage with, you can remind us who it is, but I know like the person that she was next to was Tom Brokaw, who is like,
Yeah.
a news anchor and the greatest generation. All of that was like prevalent. And this poor Fifi with her leg broken, sticking out and wearing a muumuu just
I wasn't
blew
gonna
him out of the water. You put Tom Brokaw to shame, girl. You're like an amazing speaker.
No,
So
no, no, no. Well,
how
I
did that bring you there and what did the WASP mean to you?
Well, thank you. Thank you for reminding me of this story. People ask me a lot, Nicole, what is the thing, you're most proud of in your career? And they think I'm going to say the Thunderbirds, or they think, what's your biggest accomplishment? They think something I did at the White House. And I always tell people, being a part of the very small team that was able to work towards the award of the Congressional Gold Medal to the Women Air Force Service Pilots of World War II, I found myself following the Thunderbirds as a young major, needing to do IDE, right? I needed to do school. And so instead of going down there to Maxwell Air Force Base, I applied to be a White House fellow. Through pure luck, I got selected to be a White House fellow, found myself in DC, and I had a year where I had access to doors and rooms I probably had no right having access to. And I thought to myself, well, what's a big gnarly project, that we can get done while we have this access here in DC? And prior to that, during my Thunderbird time, I had obviously, gotten to know many of the WASP. They would come out, to the air shows. And as you and Meryl agree with me, I'm sure if it wasn't for the service of the WASP in World War II, we'd be hard pressed to say that any of us would have had the opportunities, for the careers that we had. And so there was a small group of us who thought, well, wouldn't it be great, to get the WASP the recognition that they deserve? And so there was a particular WASP by the name of Deanie Parrish and her daughter Nancy Parrish, who I got to know following my time on the Thunderbirds. And we kind of got our little nuggets together and thought, well, maybe this is the time, right? Nicole's got boots on the ground in DC with some access. Maybe it's the time we can make this happen. And so it was quite a push and quite a learning experience for a young major, right? I'm thinking, well, this is a great idea. Of course, people are gonna be on board. And how naive I was, right, to politics, how naive I was to how hard it is to get something like the Congressional Gold Medal done, what it meant to garner champions and people, who would support that. And so that was something we endeavored to do during my time as a White House fellow. I'm delighted to say at the time it was the fastest bill signed into law, other than like congressional stuff from an outsider. And we were able to have that ceremony on Capitol Hill in March of 2010. And people are always like, well, does it matter if the WASP have the Congressional Gold Medal? And I tell you, it absolutely does, because remember, their stories following World War II were sealed, classified, and hidden away. I mean, there's a reason that the majority of Americans had never heard of the WASP, right? I mean, it was not in our history books. It wasn't something that was taught to us growing up. Yet generations of airmen, both women and men alike, benefited from their service. In fact, the entire free world benefited from what they did during World War II. And so the Congressional Gold Medal wasn't about a medal or an award or recognition, because as you well know, the WASP did it because it was the right thing to do, did it because of patriotism, did it because they had a skill to offer their country at a time that our country was in need. So this medal wasn't about recognition. This medal was to correct the record. And I want to be very clear on that. Deanie Parrish, when she talked to me, the WASP, she was very intent. This is about correcting the record and correcting the facts about their place and their impact, on history. And so we got to that giant ceremony, which at that time was the largest ceremony ever held on Capitol Hill. And I had been on bed rest with my broken leg with twins, and the doctors were like, no, you're not going. You can't go. And I'm like, I am going. And so I went. And I was in a wheelchair up there on stage, and I was indeed sitting next to Deanie Parrish, who I believe gave the knockout speech of the entire presentation. And in fact, folks can Google it and find it online. And I encourage them to do so, and to hear the words of Deanie Parrish as she stood up there representing, all of the WASPs that were being honored that day. Yeah, big day, big day.
So, I first of all, that story for the listeners out there, I mean, that's amazing. That's amazing to be recognized. But there's a couple of things that you pointed out that are just so different from when that happened to now. Impact, recognizing the impact that people have made, the contributions, people serving their country because they believe in it. They believe in something bigger than themselves, no matter how they look, what they're like, and they want to just serve. It's it's a little bit different, it feels like nowadays, especially as we are retired and we're out, where a lot of people are trying to tone down the impact and how things truly influence other people to love this country and join this country and feel proud about it. How does that overall make you feel? Because I know I feel a certain way about it.
Well, I feel the same way, I'm sure, as you do, Dragon. I think you're gently alluding to the fact that, very recently we've seen mass censorship of of articles, videos, social media posts across .gov and .mil websites erasing the contributions of predominantly women, people of color, in the LGBT community. And yeah, I do take issue with that, right? I didn't wear my nation's uniform for over 20 years and fly in combat for us to so easily slide into censorship. On a very top level, this is about erasing public access to knowledge. And there's something very undemocratic about that to me. On a more, I guess, lighter level, to your point, like this is about representation. This is about showing the full stories of the full fabric of America, of all the people who have contributed to, what we are today, and shining a light on everyone. And I know for a fact that it means something to see someone who looks like you succeeding. It meant something to me at 12 years old to learn about the women Air Force service pilots. It meant something and motivated me to be, when I was a cadet at the academy, to see Jeannie Leavitt become the first woman fighter pilot, right? And I know when I stood in line, and Blaze, I know you felt it too, and you have too, Dragon Lady, on those autograph lines. When those young kids come up to you, especially young women, young girls, and they look up at you like you have hung the moon, it hits you, man. It means something to see someone who looks like you succeeding. So sharing these stories are about strength. Sharing these stories are making sure that we're recruiting the best of the best, into whatever that field may be. In our case, it would be the military. Um, One of the earliest photos of me as a Thunderbird was at my first air show. I'm on the autograph line, and I love looking at the photo because I know there's so much more going on in my brain than people can see in the picture. I was just thrilled that I made it through the show, right? Like I was like the biggest like exhale of my life. I had made it to my first autograph line, and as you might imagine, there was tons of media, CNN, NBC, all up in my face, and it was very much a magnifying glass going on, and the very iconic photo is me talking to a 12-year-old girl, and she's got a big sun hat on. She's looking at me like I, had hung the moon. I think she's wearing a Civil Air Patrol sweatshirt. And we end up having this conversation. That's the photo that goes into the newspapers. And as I'm leaving the autograph line, she's wanting to give me something. And as Blaze knows, on the Thunderbirds, public affairs will pull you, like, so that you don't look like the bad guy, right? Because there's always a line. And I stopped public affairs because there was something about this gal, and I grabbed the piece of paper from her, and it was her email address.
Oh.
And I ended up writing to her, and we ended up staying in touch. And you know what? She's a major today in the United States Air Force and flying
Woo!
F-15 Strike Eagles.
Sweet.
That's why it matters.
I have chills.
100%. I feel you on that and the passion in that. Yeah, it matters a lot. And I wasn't a believer until you see those kids come up to you and the imprint that you put on them in their brain, and then they reach out to you 5, 10 years later. Yeah, that's why we're here. That's why we
Right.
do what we do.
It's about it's funny because it's not that you care that they remember your name, right? I don't care if they remember Nicole Malachowski. It's that your presence in front of them, right? As a woman of color flying the U-2, man, that is mind-blowing, right? Your presence and your success in front of them ignites that fire in them and inspires them to the art of what's possible. And I don't know that there's a greater impact you can have on somebody else than helping them achieve their definition of success. And that's what you both do every day for so many people.
Yeah,
So
thank
Nicole,
you.
when you get, young people come to you and they're like, "Hey, I'm thinking about a career in the Air Force," and especially young women, like we saw that with the WASP having to kind of swim upstream, and then we were, I think you were maybe a freshman at the academy. I was just about to enter when they lifted the combat exclusion for women, and we spent all this time, we proved our worth as women all the way back to World War II, and then to have some of the narrative lately break that trust that we've earned through over the years from people who are outside the community, and kind of set us back so that even though we know everyone's fully qualified in it, it gives the people around you just a little bit of room to doubt you. How do you factor that in when someone's like, "Hey, Nicole, I want to be a fighter pilot when I grow up"? How
Yeah.
do you? answer that, or is any part of you like, no, I wouldn't necessarily do that right now, or how do you handle that?
Yeah, no, this is a great question because it's something I definitely am struggling with. I've been retired 7.5 years now. Like you, I mentor a lot of young people. I love to answer these questions. I love when they come to me. And prior to this past year, it has been an unequivocal, enthusiastic, absolutely yes. And like you, I have found myself extremely disappointed, frustrated, disheartened, and downright angry by some of the comments that are coming out of the Department of Defense. I mean, the fact of the matter is, let's just look at women fighter pilots. We've been flying in combat for over 30 years now. I don't even know how this is like up for discussion. You can't even go into an Air Force fighter squadron and not find usually more than one woman. Back in our day, right? We were usually the only one in the room. So this is something that's been proven that we've done successfully time and time again. And this is just really disheartening. So when young women are coming up to me now, I will be very honest with you. It has been, I have had to really dig deep to stay enthusiastic. I've had to be very particular about my word choice and the words that I use. But we're talking to young people, 15, 16, 17 years old who are about to make a lifetime decision. And I think that it's okay to have those bigger conversations. Like, you do understand that right now there's a certain narrative, you know, but we need good women and people from all backgrounds to continue to come into this military. It would be easy for me to say, yeah, don't do it right now, right? They're going to just say you're a DEI hire. They're going to downplay all of your contributions or your skill set. And that probably could happen and may happen. I don't know. But what I do know is I try to focus on the future. This isn't going to last forever. I don't believe that. And we need great leaders in our military. And that starts with them now as young lieutenants or as young airmen. And so I want the good people to keep coming in. I want diverse people to keep coming in. I want the best of our country, to keep coming in. And I think this whole DEI thing is just, our country needs to get on the same page as to what DEI actually is, right? I mean, this is about casting the talent net wide. So at the starting line, we have the best choice. After that, let's run the race, right? That's
Yeah.
fine. But DEI is about casting the talent net wide. And
So
we are missing the boat.
yeah, Nicole, you couldn't have said that any better. I mean, it's all about when I talk to kids, it's about performance. Like perform, perform, perform. That is the number one thing. When people are talking behind your back, eventually they're just so focused on you that you're just going to move past them anyway. And so, like the nature of competition, people are going to try and pick at those things. It is unfortunate that DEI has been basically marketed in a very negative light, and it's just we're gonna rebrand it, remarket it, redo it, but I'll tell you, they're not gonna stop me or you ladies here from making sure that the best of the best in wherever
Yeah.
whether you're in the hood in the Bronx, in my stomping grounds, or you're somewhere in the suburbs, come one, come all, I don't care what you look like. If you can do it and fly it and get down, let's go.
That's right. And I tell them, oh, I want you to come in ask yourself every day, right? What can I do to be a master of my craft today? And just fly the plane, because the plane doesn't care, right? What your background is. Doesn't care if you're male or female, doesn't care what your religion is, does not care at all. It just wants to be flown. And the beauty of coming into a lot of these careers in the military is it's very objective, right? Like, it's not up for discussion. You can't fake flying as a Thunderbird pilot. You can't fake flying a U-2, right? Those are objective measures of actual skill. And so I want people to still come in, because honestly, the aircraft is the great equalizer. I
Yeah.
agree.
On And I think where I've come back to on some of these mentoring sessions is that the truth of the matter is we all three face some pretty crazy scrutiny, right? And so at least there's a more recent example for people to fall back on, or for us to fall back on, or the mentees that we have when they get into flying, that they can be like, I can point to someone, she's not that old and she just did this. But
Right.
um Nicole, if you're comfortable sharing this, you were under a extra like level of scrutiny as a Thunderbird. Would you be comfortable sharing some of the additional things that seem like really kind of hilarious and asinine that you had compared to everyone else?
Well, I think there was just so much more media interest at that time. You know, whenever something is a first or is a new thing, it just gets, you know, really magnified. And so I had a lot of extra media training as opposed to my other teammates. I had to do a lot of extra interviews. Now, I want to caveat this by saying the public affairs team did their best to protect me, but it was also a balance, right? To seize the opportunity, right? Because these extra interviews shined a light on the Air Force, you know, and shined a light on the Air Force story that I happen to be, you know, a small part of. And so you have to strike while that iron's hot. So I just remember there being so many more interviews, and there were times it hurt. There were times it was very lonely because we would be done with the day, done with the debrief after an air show. The guys might be going to the gym together or out to dinner together. Sometimes they went to the movies, and I'm still there, you know, doing yet another interview. And at the same time, I got to give credit to the guys on the team that I flew with, right? I mean, if I could have handpicked the best group of dudes to fly on the Thunderbirds with, I could not have even imagined as good as I got that first year. Sincerely. I mean, I wouldn't have made it through that year without them, because every time someone stuck a microphone in my face and said, "What's it like to be the first woman Thunderbird?" which I was asked countless times, they would then turn and go to them, "What's it like to fly with the first woman Thunderbird?" Right? So they bared a lot of that brunt too. And it was funny whenever we would march out to the jets, you know, as you do the show and as you're marching out to the jets, the narrator's narrating and you turn around and kind of like face the audience or whatever. Number 5, Brian Farah, he was the lead solo. He used to always sing as we were marching, "One of these things is not like the other." And that was our way as a team of just handling that extra attention together. So I didn't bear the extra attention alone, but I did bear extra attention. And then there's like the negative stuff, right? Like it was the first time in my life, and probably the only time, that I was acutely aware of people actively rooting for me to fail. And that is a really bizarre feeling. And I will tell you that the vast majority of those people came from within the Air Force.
The call is coming from inside the house.
Call was coming from inside the house. And that shocked me because it went against the wingman contract, right? It went against everything I had believed to that point, and I had to really reassess, gosh, have we as an Air Force come as far as I thought we did? Because I was like living nice and happy in my 3 fighter squadrons prior to that, thinking everything's hunky-dory. And all of a sudden you're like re-exposed, you know, to what we had gone through in the 90s. I'm like, you know, aren't we past this? So that was hard. I remember the worst thing that was ever said to me, and I haven't shared this, but here we go. If I'm going to share with anyone, I'm going to share with you two, right? And all your listeners. You know, one of the hardest things that was ever said to me when I was a Thunderbird was I got pulled aside by a general officer. I'll leave it at that. And they pulled me into the corner, and I thought I was going to get, you know, like, "Hey, you're doing great," or "How's it going?" or "What do you think about the experience?" or "Here's what you mean to my daughters," or something, right? Something positive. And he just looked at me and he said, and I'll never forget this, it's a quote. He said, "We just let you women become fighter pilots, and now you want to go and take that from us too." And I'm a young captain looking up, what do you do in that moment? You know, what do you say to something like that? And then to have to turn around and go get in the jet and fly.
You know, I wouldn't made it past captain because I would have took my rank off and I would have been whipping some ass. Like, for real. Like, how
I
do you
needed you
say that to
there.
someone?
That was hard.
That's
That was a hard day, you know, and I guess the other one, right, Caroline, was you know, I was at one of my very first air shows, and we actually got to interact with the audience. It was a small air show. Interact with the audience right before we went to the jets. Normally we don't do that, right? Normally we interact on the autograph line after we land, but this was one of those rare occasions where we were standing right there. And I was holding court with like 5 little girls, right? They're looking up at me. It's going well. I'm like, "Oh, you'd be a great fighter pilot someday. Always dream big." And then this guy behind them just interrupts. He was just an audience member, and he's just like, "Don't tell him that, you know, girls shouldn't be doing that, and you don't actually fly that plane. Why are you lying to them?" And it was crazy, right? Like the whole world like slowed down. And I remember I channeled my inner dragon lady, right? Because like I saw his boots, his jeans, his belt buckle, flannel shirt, 10-gallon hat, and then these steely blue eyes. And I looked right at him and I gave him the look, right? Like, this ain't happening, bro. And he didn't like the look. And right in front of those girls, he looked right back at me. And this is like 5 minutes before I'm in the jet. He looked right at me, stared me in the face, and out loud said, "I hope you crash." Boom.
My gosh.
Wow.
Now, those little smiles, what do you think their faces turned into, right? They turned into frowns. They're confused. They're looking at me. And in that moment, what I wanted to do was fight, right? What I wanted to do was pull out my CV and resume, prove that I had every right to be there, tell him why he was wrong. But sometimes in life, right, we know when it's not going to be worth the effort, and he wasn't worth my effort. So I remember I looked right at him. I said, sir, I hope you enjoy the show. And I looked down at those girls and I told them I would be waving at them on the very first pass, right? The diamond pass review, right, Bruce? I'm going to be looking down at you and I'm going to wave and I want to see you wave back. And I turned around and I went and got in the jet. So yeah, those are some interesting stories I haven't shared.
Yeah, that's that's beyond crazy. And for people to say that and to wish death basically on you. Like, can you
Weird.
imagine you're a mom, you're a daughter, you're a woman, and these people with no class, whether they wear the rank or not, are saying something to you pretty nasty. It just says a lot about their character. And I hope that general's retired and
They
is
are.
and
They
living
are.
living the life they deserve.
For every one of those stories, I think all of us have like 10, really
Oh,
positive
absolutely.
ones, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, the vast majority, I received thousands of letters from around the world. Thousands. I actually cataloged them. I have them in 15 6-inch binders in
Wow.
storage. I kept every single one. I answered every single one. Just positive, right? People just absolutely tickled that there was a woman out there, doing this job. And as you imagine, most of those letters came from young gals. But the second largest group of letter writers, and this, I still don't understand it. The second largest group of letter writers were male World War II veterans.
Oh,
They were just tickled. And almost every single one of them referred back to the WASP of World War II.
that's
How
cool.
interesting, right? That would come, full circle.
Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah.
what a great example you set, right? Those 5 little girls just saw this like random man just kind of reach out at you, and I think it shows a lot about emotional intelligence, right? And compartmentalization when you have to do a job, and especially in today's world where all you have to do is leave the news notifications on your phone, and you're being
Distracted.
bombarded with things that are kind of assaulting your senses
Yeah.
and your decency. I mean, I think that's a great skill for resilience.
The thing that came into my head when that guy said that, it was like time slowed down. I felt like I was in the ejection seat sequence, right? Where they say everything slows down. I'm like, did this just happen? Is this going on? Was it that I looked at him and I thought to myself, you're not my audience. You're just not my audience, right? My audience are these 5 little faces and all these other people that are out here. I'm not here for you, bro. Right? Like, go enjoy your warm Budweiser and funnel cake. Like, I got a jet to go fly. So,
Yeah.
I love it. But you're right. I mean, it's just like social media. For every 100 people who love you, you're gonna have 1 or 2
absolutely.
people that don't like you, and so that's part of the job, and that's part of knowing the fact that your impact is gonna be so much greater. So I just love it. I don't like the fact that those people, especially a general, said that to you, but it's part of what we have to do, and I think we'll do it any day, any given day.
The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by guests on All Fire No Smoke are their own and do not necessarily represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of the All Fire No Smoke production team, including hosts, producers, directors, and consultants. The content presented here is for entertainment and general information purposes only. The All Fire No Smoke name, trademark, and logos, and all forms of content are the property of its owners, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service, and cannot be used without the express written consent of All Fire No Smoke.